right, you ready to shit on this movie with me?
I don't know, dude.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a cinematic odyssey through the 100 greatest films spanning from the roaring 1920s to the cutting-edge masterpieces of 2024. Carefully curated from the lovely people on Letterboxd. Two intrepid souls embark on a journey through a treasure trove of timeless classics and groundbreaking contemporary works, where each frame embodies the enduring magic of the silver screen. Grab your popcorn and join us on this epic expedition through a century of cinematic excellence, where every film promises to enchant, inspire, and leave an indelible mark on the soul. And now, for your listening pleasure, here are the LetterBros.
Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of LetterBros, where we let a wheel decide what movie we will watch next based off the top 100 movies off Letterboxd. As always, I am Felix, and I am joined by my buddy Parker. How we doing today?
I'm just glad that movie's over, bro.
No way, dude.
We'll get into it. I'm doing good. It's finally a gray day here in Southern California, which I appreciate. I'm tired of all these simulation cloudless days. So
Yeah.
it's a little overcast. I'm feeling good.
Oh, like a nice gray day in Florida.
Yes,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And the Dodgers, as of the recording of this episode, the Dodgers have just won the World Series. And so I'm wearing my Tampa Bay hat to reminisce on when we lost to the Dodgers in the World Series. Good time.
But now you're a local. Now you can enjoy in all the riots.
I was about to say, I was actually downtown the night that they won it, and there were horseback police officers and guys with riot shields in the streets, like police officers with riot shields. It was a sight to behold. Someone lit off a firework in the parking lot that I was parked in, and you just hear all of the car alarms start going off. It was awesome. It reminds me of the Tampa Bay Super Bowl.
That's crazy, dude. Good to know that you're safe and that you still were able to enjoy the winnings of the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's awesome.
I was at a Mexican wrestling event. I could give a fuck about the World Series.
Some might say much more passionate and probably a lot more money on the line at the Mexican wrestling.
Yeah, it was the night before Halloween too. Dude, great time. It was a great time.
That's awesome, dude. I'm glad you had a good time.
Speaking
of a good time, that's not what I had with this movie.
Okay, so we are on the same page. Let me go ahead and get into a summary here of what we've got. So this is our 12th movie, as we just discussed, yes?
Yeah.
And we have Woman in the Dunes, which is currently sitting at the number 29 film on the Letterboxd Top 100 list. What was it when we created the list?
It was 30, I believe. Yeah,
Okay.
I remember. It was 30
Right,
because
yeah,
it moved up a spot. More people enjoyed this movie to push it up one more spot on this list.
So we have Woman in the Dunes, which is a 1964 Japanese film directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara. It stars Eiji Okada and Kyoko Kishida. Eiji Okada plays an entomologist who is wandering the dunes looking for a specific variation of tiger beetle so he can get his name in a journal and leave his mark on society. When all of a sudden, boom, he's held captive by the population of a seaside village. Specifically, he is forced to live with a woman whose house is at the bottom of a dune pit and shovel all of the sand in order to receive water and other rations. Great premise. It's a great premise.
But
so what did you think of the movie, Felix?
Just trying to not.
So we're going to get into our pros and our cons. There are some things, and obviously it's been spoiled. We're not even 5-10 minutes into the episode, and I think we both feel similar to this movie as we did with Human Condition. I have a feeling it's going to be probably at the bottom near Human Condition by the time all is said and done. But let's start off with the positives. I'm curious to hear what it was that you liked about this movie, if anything, because there were still some things that drew me into the movie, even if on the whole I didn't particularly enjoy it.
Even going into this episode today, I could not remember this movie for the life of me. It was just moving pictures with
so no pros.
There are some pros. I will say the acting performances from our two main characters were pretty solid. I have a very big gripe with the beginning of the film, but like once we're in the house
Mhm.
and in the dune, I think the performances are very strong. Well, mainly because we almost like scenes from a marriage. We only have like a group of what, 4 or 5 people in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, there are more people specifically in one scene towards the end, which I just thought was fucking ridiculous, if I'm being honest,
Yeah.
and we'll get into that. But yes, I think that this is what happens when a limited cast goes wrong. Nothing against the performances. I don't think they were anywhere near what we got in Scenes from a Marriage,
Oh
personally,
yeah.
in terms of the performance. But yes, this is similar in the sense that we only have 2 people that are being portrayed throughout the duration of the movie. Anyone else who is in the movie is a tertiary character and honestly not all that important to the plot. But I'm
Yeah.
curious. You said you had a gripe with the beginning of the movie. What was that gripe? Was it the fact that he just fucking fell asleep in the middle of the desert and all boom, he woke up and missed the bus?
Not even
I
that.
didn't
It
love
was
that.
mainly like because this movie had a lot of horror vibes, and this guy is just like is prime meat in a horror movie, especially
Mhm.
in the beginning, like when he wakes up and he misses the bus, and this random dude that came out of the desert out of nowhere is like, "Oh, I got a place to stay for you," and he's like, "Oh, that's great." Let alone it's in the bottom of a giant sand pit.
Yeah, I think that the whole setup for this movie was quite comical. I appreciate where we get to because again, I think that the premise is a good premise. And I wish that they even leaned more into the horror aspect of this movie because something that I loved about the movie, the score was very horror-esque. It
Yeah.
was very suspenseful, but the whole setup was also horror movie-esque in the sense that it didn't make logical sense. The script was just serving itself to get to where it wanted to be, and it didn't do so in a way that seemed justifiable.
I agree with you. Literally, my first note is that the score is haunting, and I really liked it. I think it was the best part of the movie, honestly.
Yes, I
Um,
agree. And that score is by Toru Takemitsu, if I'm not mistaken.
yep, that's
And
exactly who did it.
I agree. I think that was the best part of the movie.
My
Coupled with,
second note is this guy is just begging to be killed.
what do you
Like
mean
when
by that?
he's like, again, jumping into like horror tropes, like this guy would not survive 5 minutes in a horror movie. Instantly trusting the people around him in this pretty much abandoned desert. He says that he's going to go and like follow the highway. You don't see a highway for I don't think you see a highway in this movie, so I don't know where the nearest highway is, but
Or a bus
this
station.
man is not thinking. This man's only got bugs on the brain. Like he is after
And in his
bugs.
brain, dude, he's the type of dude that's making decisions as though he's got brain worms.
Yeah. He's not a very sympathetic character. Like it was very hard for me to feel bad for his situation when he ultimately was the one that put himself in there. Like
Yes, I agree. I didn't care for either of the main characters.
I felt okay
That
about
made
the
watching them.
widow in the dunes, which is literally her name. Kyoko Kishida literally is credited playing widow in the dunes. She doesn't have a name. We really only get like a very like simple backstory of that her husband and her child were killed and swallowed up by the sand around her, and she's pretty much every day she is forced to shovel up sand to not only get provisions but to stop her house essentially from sinking into the desert itself.
Yeah, just utterly ridiculous. Come on.
Like
And
now
we
thinking
kind of
about it.
find out that she was shoveling sand, to be sold at half price to the union in order to make dams and other types of, machinery or infrastructure that relies on sand. Because throughout most of the runtime, I was sitting here thinking how dumb it was that this is even the main point of the movie when how much sand do you need to shovel in one day when there's literally pounds and pounds of sand falling through your roof at any given moment? So much so that you need
Yeah.
to put up an umbrella in order to eat your food or sleep.
And
I
not
mean, the
only that,
whole
why are you asking this woman to get this sand for you when literally your entire village is surrounded by fucking sand? Like, why is sand such a hot commodity when it's
yeah.
literally right outside your door?
And steering us back into some of the positives about the movie, I do think that I feel that Teshigahara did a good job of making the sand the third character in the film. It did feel
Mhm.
very invasive and it felt kind of dirty at times when you were watching it. And I felt as though the sand served as a phenomenal antagonist without even having to be portrayed by an actor. It's so creeping and it's such a nuisance and it's so pervasive throughout the entire film that I think that that was another one of the film's strongest aspects. I wish that, again, it was executed better, because at the end of the day, I didn't care about the people who we were watching, so the stakes meant nothing to me. I would have preferred if the entire house collapsed and they died halfway through the runtime and then the credits rolled, personally. So, sorry to be
You
harsh.
hate these people, dude.
I just don't find them to be sympathetic characters. Absolutely. And it's the exact opposite of Scenes from a Marriage, where both of these characters are so flawed, but you still care about both of them. Here they're flawed and they're written in such a way that only serves purpose of
A
what
plot.
happens next. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just didn't find myself caring about them. So the movie felt like a complete drag. To be horribly honest with you, I don't think I've ever checked the runtime so much watching a movie.
Well, it's funny that I just listened to our episode of Scenes from a Marriage, and to get such a like almost opposite end of the spectrum, where this movie, while I think in my personal opinion I thought it was visually fine, like a lot of the shots were really cool and it made me think a lot about like David Lynch movies, like early David Lynch, like Eraserhead and Elephant Man, where it's like these very abstract shots that connect somewhat to the story. Like even Eraserhead, like the visuals tell the story for the most part, and it's done in a way that's artistic and makes sense, but it's like done in an effective way. Whereas this, it's like, yes, the visuals are there and it made me feel like I was watching a David Lynch film, but then you get back to the characters and you're just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about these people. I don't care that this man is like trying to find these little bugs around. Like
I mean,
it was very hard to connect to these people.
And not only that, not only are the characters not someone that you're able to, at the end of the day, I guess, project yourself onto, because that's sometimes what makes a great movie. But not only that, but also the conflicts that are set up throughout this movie are so minuscule. Can you hear that helicopter?
No.
Okay. Good microphone. The conflicts that are set up throughout the film are so minuscule that I just couldn't give a shit about them. The movie ends with our protagonist deciding to stay in this hellhole of a pit because he found out that if he leaves a barrel underground, it'll get a little bit of water in it.
And that he can use that to like give to the villages or to the villagers and, somewhat help them. And then he's like, like I'll think about escaping someday, even though he was able to do it twice. It's another one of our desert movies where he's fallen in love with the desert. But I don't care enough that you love the desert. Like, I'm sorry that.
And I think that there's supposed to be more to it than that. His character has, if you ask anybody, been developed, and he's now seeing, like you said, the desert for this beautiful place, and he realizes that he can still have fulfillment in this pit. But I just think it's so goofy, and I think it's so ridiculous. To the
Literally, one of the lines of dialogue that this man says is, "Shit, it was a trap." Like, a line like that in a movie like this, it just takes me out. Like, you knowingly put yourself in this situation and are now realizing that it was a bad idea. Like, come on, dude. At least make it somewhat believable.
Right. And well, what I'm saying is that I knew from a mile away that by the end of this movie, this guy was going to choose to stay in the pit. I don't know about you. I thought that was exactly the direction we were headed. And lo and behold, it was. And it felt so undeserved, because literally 15 minutes ago, we were watching him attempt to rape this woman in order for them to let him out for 10 minutes. And then
that part wasn't great.
And then, all of a sudden she's pregnant, literally out of the fucking blue. And it's a pregnancy outside of her uterus, from my understanding. So she's, that's life-threatening.
That sucks, and that she still has to carry it out to term, even though it's not going to be a fully developed fetus. Like, I feel bad. Like, that situation does suck. And I mean, this woman is obviously like emotionally attached to this house. This is where she grew up with her husband, her child, and then they died. So now, like, this has become another part of her. So to see her get hoisted up and have to be taken out, and she's just saying no repeatedly, like, no, that I felt kind of bad for her, but then by the end, I'm like, you're making me feel for this character way too late in this movie. Like after that scene, the movie ends in like what, like 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, I still didn't give a shit. And as I was saying,
It's fucking
he's
savage, bro.
but as I was saying, all of a sudden she's taken away and he just chooses to stay in the pit. It just felt so undeserved because this entire movie we're watching this guy literally try and devise a trap to catch a crow to put a message on its leg so that maybe someone will find the message, come and locate him and rescue him. And then
And
20
steal
minutes later,
steal
and
household
well,
items to like,
yeah,
get
exactly.
himself out of the pit. Like,
And then minutes later, he's refusing and saying, "You know what? Maybe I'm happy here." I thought it was bullshit.
dude, we are not agreeing with I think this is what, like 2 movies in the top 30 that we have not been very like even Human Condition, like we haven't agreed on it. And like I can't see, but even then, like Human Condition still has 2 more movies to get us hooked onto. Like I get it, it was the first part of a
Yeah,
trilogy, but like this is just a standalone one-shot movie, and it's just you've had this time to develop and make us care about this movie, and you did not do that.
I'm curious. There are parts of this movie that I can look at in hindsight and understand why people would appreciate it. Like you said, it does have some visually gripping sequences. The sand and the atmosphere, I think, is very well done. I think that if you wanted to, you could apply some semblance of meaning to this utterly meaningless film in my mind. So I would like to hear, if you are listening to this and you absolutely loved Woman in the Dunes, please, like genuinely, please, will you leave a comment or something along those lines to let us know what it was that you really liked about the film? Because I'm struggling to understand why it's at number 29.
Moving up one, like more people decided to hop on Letterboxd and push the score forward to push it up some more. Like
And
that's
you
what
know what?
I'm
Maybe
trying to
it's
figure
possible.
out.
Maybe it's a lack of research, but I don't know. Maybe this movie or the thoughts provoked in this movie contributed to some grand idea in cinematic history, but I'm not really
That's
sure.
literally what I'm like, I see a lot of David Lynch in this movie, so maybe I was like trying to see if there was like some influence, but there's nothing on here. At least like on the internet, there's nothing like really saying like, oh, like David Lynch really liked this movie. Like it just felt like literally a David Lynch film.
Yeah,
Speak your
I'm not
piece.
really finding anything as to what kind of influence it's had.
I'm looking up
Other
IMDb trivia just for just to find something, dude, like something redeemable about this movie.
Yeah, and
Uh
again, while you're doing that, I will say that there is a world in which a movie with this same premise is made in a similar fashion that I end up really liking it. I think that there was a lot to work with in terms of the ideas that are being presented and the setup that we have. Again, I think that it could have been set up way better, but being trapped at the bottom of a sand pit is such a twist on those types of isolated with natural. You remember in elementary school when it's man versus nature, so on and so forth?
yeah.
This I love the idea of having sand as the main antagonist in a man versus nature plot conflict. I think that
Yeah.
it was an interesting take on the natural disaster type of film. Um,
Mhm.
but it just didn't work for me. It did not work.
Yeah, because at least
Did
like
you
in
find
those aspects, like almost like what you're saying, there's literally like the one notable fact is for this film, Hiroshi Teshigahara became the first Japanese director to be nominated for an Oscar for directing.
Woman in the Dunes was actually nominated for Best Foreign Language Film also at the Academy Awards. And
Well,
at Cannes Film Festival, Woman in the Dunes was awarded the jury prize, and this is all obviously 1964. That's surprising to me. Did you see similarities? I know they're very different movies, but would you say that you disliked this movie for similar reasons than why you disliked Human Condition? And which one do you think you preferred before we move into the rankings? Because I have a feeling we might as well move in relatively soon. It's going to be a shorter episode, but
yeah, like I would say for as much gripes that I have with this movie, there was more eye candy that whereas like I get checked out, I like checked out of the movie from the performances itself. there were still like fun things to look at, and like I think what was it? One of the taglines that we read on Letterbox was that this was like, seductive or sexy. Like that's what I thought the movie was going to predominantly be, but then even the sex scene that we do get, I don't know, it feels so uncomfortable to
And
watch.
also unwarranted. He gets drunk, and then he
It's
starts
literally
to
any time
basically
like they're
well, he
bathing or
starts to
like touching each other. Like it's
yeah.
instant, just
You
to
know,
a point.
I guess some of it was deserved because early on we see the scene where he sees her sleeping naked, and so there is some build up to that. But that definitely wasn't the worst part of the film. But
They
to
just
your
don't feel
point,
like they have an actual relationship.
no, of course. I mean, she's a crazy lady.
Going back onto the point of did I like this more than Human Condition? I did, but mainly because there was more of a tone that I was familiar with and that I liked in terms of like horror, like the score. I'll somewhat disagree that like the scene where they're like, oh, you can come out to the ocean, but you have to show us a little something, and they have the whole village there. Like that was a little tense. Like as
Yeah,
much
and
as
then
it
it
was
went on
like,
for way too long to the point again where it was boring. I felt
that's
that
where I have the fault. Yeah.
this movie draws out the most mundane conflicts. It doesn't make sense to me. At one point, he has finally escaped, and instead of some actual thrilling plot devices going on, we just have like 4 minutes of him running until eventually he dips into quicksand. Nothing interesting
Yeah.
happens. They pull him out of quicksand, and then boom, he's back in the pit. And again, in terms of its predictability, I knew the instant that man was out of the pit, ain't no way that he was staying there. I knew that this movie was going to go
Mhm.
right back to its boring little sand hole for the rest of the duration. And unfortunately, nothing interesting happened in between his 2 sandhole visits. So,
No.
yeah,
And even then, like, they never really explain why he's a prisoner in the first place. Like, there's no, like,
the dude that kidnaps him leaves him the first time that they meet. And then he falls asleep, asks for a place to stay, and then
yeah,
he's taken held captive. At no point was this man forcibly put into this dune.
no,
I
he
mean,
wasn't kidnapped. Like,
crazy,
yeah.
crazy. Someone's cooking. It smells good.
You know
Like
who's not cooking?
pork chops. Teshigahari.
Hiroshi Teshigahara.
Damn, dude. Come on.
And I feel bad that we're like
Now that's low.
shitting
Now
over
that's
over this critically acclaimed movie,
I
but
could never make a movie like this. I mean,
oh no, because you actually like developing characters and a
yeah,
good
my movie.
narrative, and
Okay, we gotta chill.
and
We
y-
gotta chill. No,
and you
again, though,
would make smart character decisions.
sound off though. If there is a reason, that you really liked this movie, because I would be genuinely curious, and I'm always open to having discussion. That's why you and I do this show in the first place. I will say I'm a little disappointed that we tend to agree so much on the films that we like and dislike. I want a little bit of debate here. But hey, at the end of the day, this isn't ESPN. We're not making up conflict just for the sake of
Yeah,
having dissenting opinions.
but
What do you
that's
say?
like,
You wanna hop into this?
yeah, let's hop into it just because I feel like, again, I've been live editing my score just because thinking about it more, like I can't remember anything I enjoyed about watching this movie besides the score and just like the overall visuals. But we'll get into that more with the rating. So let's
Again, yeah,
see
and in
here.
the way that we rate the movies, that's only one category. So even if this movie had a 10, let me save it. Let me save it. Let's go ahead and hop
Yeah,
into it.
let's do it. So enjoyability and rewatchability. I gave this a 10 out of 15. Just because, again, there's an atmosphere there that I enjoyed. Like the atmosphere, the vibes from the movie were enjoyable. But if I wanted more vibes from this, I can go and watch like a Robert Eggers movie, or I can watch a David Lynch film that I would probably enjoy a lot more. So that's where I'll put it, just because it did give me those like little hints of that, but never really fully executed on them.
Well, this is gonna get messy. I gave it a 4 because really just did not enjoy it. I could go lower. And again, I
Do
I
it.
hate talking poorly about movies 'cause any movie, especially a movie on this technical level, it's obviously critically acclaimed for a reason. We may not agree with it, but any movie, I know that any movie, even a 20-minute short film, takes so much effort, so much passion to make So I hate when I find a movie that I come across that I don't like, but hey, at the end of the day, movies are subjective, and this one just was not up my alley, so I gave it a
Mm-hmm.
4 there.
What'd you think of the story?
So this is where I thought that there was a little bit of room for Human Condition actually to pull ahead, because while I did not enjoy Human Condition, I thought that a lot of the themes being discussed were at least relevant and made clear and discussed in a manner that was a little bit more elegant. Here, I felt as though it was a very basic story that, in my opinion, didn't have a lot to say outside of its own context. I think I gave it an 8. Let me confirm. Yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 15.
All right, so I gave it
Gonna fill up my water. I can still hear you.
okay, go for it. And I hate how positive I am in terms of like these movies and just basically this whole show. I always want to see the positive light in what's going on. So I also gave it a 10. Just like you said, the premise it's a good premise. It's a good story that could have been executed a little bit better if we were given time to not only care about the characters, but have them feel like these are actual people. Because I mean, him getting into this pit, he literally feels like it's a you're pushing the plot forward to just by making this character stupid. But I will say that the story was enjoyable. I just wish I cared more about the story. They should have
It's
gotten
almost 3 hours long.
that too. Like, it's to your point about when that first escape attempt, when he's just running around, I'm like, there's no way. So that was the first time I checked the time, and I'm like, oh, we still have like an hour left. Like, of course he's just gonna go back to the dunes.
Right. But how
Like,
interesting would it have been maybe if, he ends up in the village for a little bit that we're always talking about and never see? Huh,
oh, or makes it back to civilization and realizes that he truly doesn't fit in. Because he said that like he's literally coming to collect bugs to escape
Mhm.
Tokyo, to escape like that lifestyle because he feels more comfortable collecting bugs, but then keeps harkening back to, oh, I'm statist over there, or my work will continue to look for me. They're gonna send a rescue team. I know they will. Like, just make up your mind, dude. Like, do you hate society or are you a part of it?
Real quick, at the end of the movie, we realize he stayed down there for at least 7 years, which okay.
Just like, okay, dog, you sure? Yeah, this man lived 7 years by just collecting water in a hole of dirt or a hole of sand.
I wonder if he ever
Uh,
found that tiger beetle.
he did find the tiger beetle.
The one for his book?
Yeah,
Oh,
he found that part I remembered because it was kind of funny that he's like scurrying around in the sand and he's like just digging into it to get this bug. And when he comes in, he's like, I found it. And like that just gave me like that gave me like big energy of like kid comes in with like a bag of poop and is like, Mommy, look what I found. And you're like, oh, that's great, honey. Go throw it away now.
how much is this movie gonna stick with you?
Not is the answer. I gave it a 6. Again, this is if there are plenty of other movies out there to put me in the mindset and the vibe that I saw in this movie and enjoyed, but it's not something I again going into recording today. I was like, so what happened in this movie again? Like, I'm glad I had notes. Like, if not, I probably would have burnt out. What do you think?
I also gave it a 6.
Heck yeah, we finally
I
I would
I
say
had
we
it
finally agree.
I had it at a 7 at first, but because I felt that maybe just under half would be fine. But this is not, I mean, this is a movie that I don't necessarily need to use brain space for after watching it and after recording
Mhm.
this episode. There are times in which I watch a movie and I feel that it doesn't stick with me and I wish that it did more because I remember liking it, but I just can't remember, exactly what was there that I liked so much. This is one where I'm actively not caring whether or not it sticks to me. I didn't take away any kind of grand theme or powerful message. And I know that they're there. I know that there are strings that you can draw to an overlying message and what you should walk away from this film with. For me, it wasn't there. Visual and auditory appeal for me is the only positive category that I have. I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that the score was really, really well done. I thought it was great. Again, one of the best parts of the movie. And I also thought that the sand was the other best part of the movie. And a lot of that has to do with some of the shots that we get of the sand breaking and the way that the sand moves in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense to the naked eye. So
Yeah,
I
it
thought that
almost looked
that
like
was very well.
water dripping down. Like it was
Right,
very flowy.
right. So definitely closer to an 8 than to a 10, but that was definitely the strongest part of the movie was its visual and auditory appeal.
I gave it an 8 just for those reasons too. Like the score was very heavy hitting and it pretty much carried the movie for me. Like the score was pretty memorable. And the
Mhm.
shots obviously like of the sand, like to your point, I didn't even think about it that way. So thank you for doing that. Um definitely like helped me carry that score a little bit, but then the rest of the movie it's just you're in the same setting the entire time and it just got very tiring to look at. Like,
Mhm.
I did not wanna be there anymore. Like, the only time it felt different was towards the end when it's December and they're, like, in different clothes, like, obviously because it's colder, but, like, it felt like I was in a different place finally, whereas, like, every day it's in the sun, it's just the desert, you don't know what your sense of time is, which I guess is a directorial choice, but it
I
did
think
not
that's
hit for
definitely the
me.
point. I think you're definitely supposed to feel as though you're trapped there with them. So I think it did an effective job of that. It just wasn't an enjoyable experience. And I get that there are movies that want to make you feel trapped and they can still be fun. I think Sunset Boulevard is another example of that, where you feel trapped along with the characters while
Yeah.
you're watching the movie. To your point about the change in weather or storm, anything along those lines, there's one point towards the end of the movie where you hear howling wind the entire time, and they go outside multiple times, and there's no sand being blown around. So we'll
Yeah.
get to that in suspension of disbelief, but that was a major disconnect for me. Thinking, okay, my ears are telling me that there's a massive windstorm going on, and y'all are outside walking around like you're on the beach.
They
Oh, go
forgot to
ahead.
get the PA to start throwing sand at the actors that
I,
day.
I guess so.
Pacing I gave a 4. A lot of this movie dragged,
Yeah, me
a
too.
lot. Like, and besides, like, all the visuals and all of that, like, every time we were in the house, I was just waiting for this scene to be over. Like, there wasn't anything really hooking me and pushing this story along for me to where, like, to your point, I was checking the time multiple times throughout this movie to be like, okay, can we please get a move on? And then, especially as much as I felt tense and somewhat enjoyed that last scene of like the villagers around them, even that like was too long. It was
Yeah.
way too long.
And for nothing, because that scene is over and essentially nothing happens after. There's
Yeah.
no ramifications of what we just witnessed. And I think that that was a running theme throughout this movie where things happening that don't carry over into the next scene or scenes after that. There's no repercussion and there's no learning and there's no adjustment to the plot from what we're watching happen. So I agree. I almost every scene from I'd say a quarter of the movie onwards, I was just waiting for the next thing to happen, crossing my fingers that it was going to actually mean something. I also gave the pacing a 4. And we
Nice.
talk a lot about runtime, and runtime is not a bad thing. I don't care if a movie has a long runtime. Love
Yeah.
Exposure, for example, felt like a 2.5 hour movie. This movie felt like a 4.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
So it wasn't well paced. The
No.
acting was fine. I thought that the acting was good and serviceable. There were some moments where I thought it was a little hokey. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Oh, well, you're better than me because I gave it a 6 out of 10.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, mainly because I felt the only person I ever felt with a connection with was the widow. Kyoko Kishida
She did a great
does
job. Yeah,
very well. She was the best actor in this movie. Like,
I
I don't
agree.
know. There
The
was
villagers,
nothing.
the villagers were comical, in my opinion.
They were funny. They just that was another thing. Like for them to be somewhat like menacing and like holding this person capture, despite the fact that we don't really know why they're doing that, but they're not really you don't really feel like, oh, I hate these people for holding this person captive. Like they just kind of feel just like people. And then
They're
even
just there.
towards, yeah, they're just there. And then towards the end, they just show up because now she's feeling sick and they bring in a doctor. They're just like, oh, well, let's go and take her to the hospital. Like, where's this sense of humanity throughout any part of the movie? And if you're showing us that, why are you keeping these people in a dune in the first place?
Right. And I did think it was interesting that she also kind of had a hand in his kidnapping because she wanted him to be there. So I thought that she did a good job in her performance. She played just enough lunacy, in my opinion, for it to be.
Yeah.
She was walking that line the entire time of a sympathetic character who's also kind of a villain.
She didn't feel like an old hag or like some crazy lady. Like she was just enough to where you felt bad for the trauma that she went through, and that trauma obviously has affected her in this way that, like, she seems crazy, but she's not manic.
Right.
And she did that very well. And all those 6 points are going to you, my friend. Good job. Suspension of disbelief. I gave it a 3
Oh,
because,
okay.
oh Lord, there was nothing that made me care about this movie, that made me think that, oh, like, this makes sense. Nothing about this movie made sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll leave it, because I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there saying like, oh, well, this is what this means. I'm like, okay, but if I have to do the work in taking on yours, like Bergman does this very well, where it's, again, he leaves you behind just enough for you to come up with your own opinions about his story, but
And
he
his
still
story
gives
still
you
makes sense. Like, things
correct.
still lead to one another in a logical manner, even if the premise that we're watching unfold is fantastical.
It's, you can kind of have your own feelings and your own interpretation of it while still enjoying the story that is put in front of you on screen. Whereas this, it's like, if you're going to go and try and argue with me, it's like, oh, this is supposed to be interpreted in this way and blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's fine, but make it enjoyable to watch. Like,
And make it make sense. Allow
that
it
too.
to work. This movie is supposed to be grounded in reality. There are no fantastical elements. There are no supernatural
Correct.
elements that are being shown here. None of the introduction, and I gave it a 5, and I could go
Oh,
lower. I gave it a 5, but you're right. We get into the pit in a fashion that makes 0 sense. There's no forcible kidnapping. I thought that it was set up very poorly. It made me already not care about the dude because you're right. He's making final girl decisions, or not even final girl decisions. He's making first death decisions. And I also hate the ending. I thought that it was obvious that that was going to happen, and in my mind, it wasn't justifiable. It didn't make any sense given what we had just watched for the past 2 hours and 25 minutes. And then there are elements along the way, such as the windstorm with no sand flying, as well as various small other things that just mildly annoyed me. But the beginning, the ending, and that storm are the main 3 that bring it down to a 5 for me. I do think that we got a pretty original premise here. Moving into originality, I just didn't think it was executed in a very original fashion, or at least nothing that was incredibly groundbreaking to my mind. But it was still something different. I can't say I've watched a movie exactly like this. I gave it an 8, and with many of these scores, I probably could go one number lower. But again, I liked that it was sand that we were dealing with, as opposed to, I don't know, earth. I guess we did have earthquakes, but we see earthquakes often, or big storms or tsunamis. We've seen
yeah.
it all before. So I liked the premise. Again, I wish it was executed better.
And in that aspect, I gave it a 7, just because, again, this was if you want to call it a disaster film, this was a very original premise to a disaster film, or I would actually put this more in a category of, like, survivalist, like almost like a Castaway, where,
Yeah.
you're put into a situation and you just have to survive it. But unlike Castaway, where I enjoyed the performance and I cared for the character and was rooting for him to want to leave the situation that he was in, I couldn't feel bad for him. Like, you did this to yourself, and the way that you're playing it off is just very selfish, very aggressive. Like, you're kind of being a prick to this woman who just lost her family.
Well, she's also
But
holding him captive. But
I mean, is she though?
yeah, 100%.
How?
Well, in the beginning of the movie, she literally says that she needed a man to be down there. She gets extra rations for him being there because she has a man in the household. She needs the company, and the village wants an extra hand to be shoveling the sand so they can make more money. So I got that, and she was crying when he left, and she had a line where she said, "I keep being scared that I'm going to wake up with you gone." So she wanted him there in the first place. She's part of the reason in my mind, that he's being held captive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you could see that. If again, it's another instance of if I wanted a movie like this, I have another movie that I will enjoy a lot more, but I can give it the respect it deserves for the way that it presented these ideas, and with mainly the visuals that I thought were very original, and obviously the score very original. It was very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Attachment, I give it a 1, just because
Just
I feel
enough
like
to knock
that's
it up to 3 stars.
there we go. So you see, we don't truly hate this movie. What did you give it?
I also gave it a 1. I
Okay,
could give it
cool.
a 0. I'm tempted to give it a 0 if I'm being
No,
honest.
I don't.
But hey, at the end of the
I was
day,
leaning closer to that, but I'm like, I feel like I gotta like fucking hate this movie to give it a 0, and I didn't. I didn't like that. I didn't hate this movie. I just didn't
it did
like
have
it.
it had redeeming factors in my mind.
Yeah, and that's
It
where
was
I'm
on
like, you
the higher
can
end of 2.5 stars. And that
correct.
I think that's fitting. So this definitely is going to end up as the lowest rated movie on our list.
It sure
The first movie
is.
to have an average score in the 50s. So what is our final score here? 52.5.
It is no, it's 53.5.
So that's
Fuck.
8 points lower than we had Human Condition, which that's surprising to me.
Bold.
So I think that's something to be said here, because we have disliked Human Condition far more than any of the other 10 movies, and now this we like significantly less than Human Condition.
Way less.
So our bottom 3 for our audio listeners that can't see the screen right now. Our number 10 film is Sherlock Jr., which we both liked, has an average score of 71, which is good. Our number 11 film is Human Condition 1, which has an average score of 61.5, almost 10 full points lower than Sherlock Jr. And Woman in the Dunes is our number 12 at a 53.5, 8 points lower than our number 11 film. So there's definitely a drop off here at number 11 and 12.
And a very wide range of scores so far. Like part of me felt that like, we were going to like a lot of these movies and we were going to have to play around. Like we've had 2 instances where we've had ties, and I thought that was going to be predominantly what we were going to run into going into this list. But I mean, thanks, Woman in the Dunes. You really put some variety in this list for sure in terms of our score. So it's showing us that no movie is safe. I don't care what you are, where you are on the Letterboxd top 100 list.
I think our 2 lowest are the 2 currently highest on the top 100.
Yeah. Well, High and Low is still up there. High and Low is a top 10 movie, and we loved it.
That's true. That is true. All right, are you ready to hopefully get a really good one?
Oh
here?
Yeah, I've been waiting.
I know the whole time I was watching, I'm like, I can't wait to spin that fucking wheel.
Like in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, we're gonna, as much as I would say we're gonna put this movie in the rafters, I feel that we're gonna put this movie back in the sandy hole that it came from, and let it leave there. Let it shovel that sand. But
still a lot of movies to go, man. A lot of movies to go.
I know, dude. There's 88 left, so we're in the thick of it now. Are you
at this point now? And I'm curious. Never mind.
Do you want an English film?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's only one thing that'll decide it. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Ready as ever. This is the most we're hitting.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, did it lag out?
It might have a little bit. Oh my god.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. Dude, we keep getting... So we've had 3 Bergman films. Now this is 2 Studio Ghibli films with the number 28 movie Grave of the Fireflies, one that you were just talking about in the last episode.
Really?
Or
Yeah.
not Wild Strawberries, 2 episodes ago in Spirited Away.
Yeah, during Spirited Away's episode. Oh,
Mhm.
dude, that's gonna be good. I haven't seen it, but that's gonna be. And it was funny because if we wouldn't have gotten this, the next movie was going to be Goodfellas.
Oh, that would have been nice.
But I think there's
I love
an English dub that if we really want to, we can watch it in English.
We'll see. I mean, I really don't mind that much. Goodfellas would have been
Yeah.
a nice change of pace, though, certainly. We've
Oh
had a lot
yeah.
of Japanese films. If it hasn't been a Japanese film, it's been a Bergman film. It's interesting
It
to see
keeps going back and forth.
I know, and now or a Ghibli film too. So for only having 13 movies now, we have not had a lot of diversity in the films that we're watching, in my opinion.
Mhm.
In my opinion.
Which I think will push towards us, like towards the end of this tenure, getting like American bangers, like just straight up, just the last like 20 films we get are all going to be
Well,
English
about
American films.
40% of the films in our top 100 are English language American films. So
Exactly.
that's just math. At some point, we're gonna have The Thing, Goodfellas, Godfather Part 2. I know that
The
there's
Lord of the Rings.
Spider-Verse is on there. Lord of the Rings trilogy is on there. I'm excited for Grave of the Fireflies because you had said that it's one of the tougher ones to watch, and I'm excited to dive into it.
That's it's only what I've heard. Like I from hearing about it and having it be on this list, I didn't want to dive further into it. I've just heard it's a very difficult watch in terms of an animated film, but it's Ghibli can do no wrong. But I know, knowing that it's a Ghibli film, I'm happy that we're going to get something that we thoroughly enjoy.
And a different
But
director than Spirited Away as well.
correct. So this one, Grave of the Fireflies, which released in 1988, is directed by Isao Takahata. And the premise here: in the final months of World War II, 14-year-old Saita and his sister Setsuko are orphaned when their mother is killed during an air raid in Kobe, Japan. After a falling out with their aunt, they move into an abandoned bomb shelter. With no surviving relatives and their emergency rations depleted, Saita and Setsuko struggle to survive. This has an average rating of 4.5 on Letterboxd and is currently sitting at the 26th spot on the top 250 list, where we had it at 28. So more people have been pushing for this film recently, which I like. And this movie completely deserves it. I've heard nothing but good things about
Have you
it,
seen
and
it?
I'm ready. I haven't seen it, but I'm ready to cry.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. I feel better about this. I feel better about it.
I feel so bad. You seem so distraught from this movie.
From Woman
It's
in the
just,
Dunes?
yeah, dude. You sound defeated.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you there.
Well, I'm glad that we're going to get into, I mean, this movie I've heard is sad as hell, but at least it's going to be an enjoyable watch. That's what I'll say. I'm glad that the wheel gave us something somewhat familiar again. And I mean, we have come to know Ghibli films, or at least like I have. I know like you just dipped your toe, but you loved it. Seeing as it's our number one spot. Spirited Away is our number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully this could join the ranks of the top 5, or maybe even surpass Spirited Away. We'll see. Little bit of, actually not a shorter episode. We're finally under an hour. So good job.
Yeah.
But other than that, Parker, it's always a pleasure to go and talk movies with you. And as always, where can people find you?
Pleasure is all mine, Felix. You can find me at Paget. I think I always forget my fucking life. Parker_Paget. That's 2 T's at the end. If you'd like to follow along with what I'm watching in between the Letterboxd top 100. And yeah, follow me on there. You can follow the official LetterBros Letterboxd account too. And follow us on Instagram. Go and follow us on Instagram. We hit a little bit of a plateau. So if you're hearing this and you've got the IG and you want to see all of Felix's wonderful short creations, go and give us a follow on there.
You've been some very bad boys and girls not going onto the Instagram. So go redeem us. Don't make Parker cry. Let Grave of the Fireflies do that.
I do want to give I want to give one shout out actually, and I should have done this on earlier episodes, but one of our followers from the beginning is one of my buddies, Brice Anthony Heller, and
Yeah.
he just came out with his directorial debut a little while ago, I think 3 months ago, called Birthday Boy. So if you are looking for a cool independent film to go watch and you want to support someone in the industry doing their thing, both acting, directing, writing, and so on, go check out Brice Anthony Heller's Birthday Boy, and let me tell you where you can find that as well.
You need to change your posters, dude.
Vafangulo. You can find it on YouTube. So if you search up Birthday Boy film on YouTube, you'll be able to go ahead and watch it there. So it's free. So if you're in the mood for something new, refreshing, good independent film, then go check out Birthday Boy on YouTube.
Awesome. I'll definitely check that out too. I always love supporting that. And he's been very active on the Instagram.
Shout out Brice.
Yeah, shout out Brice. He's doing his thing and he's supporting the channel. So why not spread the love? You can also find me on Letterboxd at Etzio911. That's ETZIO911. Posted a couple reviews there. I'm at the movies almost more than I am in my own house. So go look that up. We also have our TikTok account as well that I've been trying to maintain. I might just hire a 20-year-old to go and run it for us, but mainly we're mainly active on Instagram. So that's where all the latest news and everything is. And always make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to get the video version of this, and for the podcast version on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get it, make sure that you review 5 stars and leave us some nice comments. So that'd be nice. But as always, until then, this is the LetterBros podcast, and we will see you at the movies.